So welcome back to 7 Skills for the Future podcast series 2. I'm Emma Sue Prince and I'm joined by my producer. Welcome back, James.
Hi, Emma Sue. It's great to be back. Hi, everyone.
So first of all, thank you to all your feedback and reviews about Series 1. It's been a great experience doing this podcast and I'm really excited about Series 2. So welcome to the show. This podcast is all about putting you into the driving seat of your own life. You're going to be so much happier and live a life of purpose and meaning just by using these 7 skills. So in the first series, I discussed the world we're living in now, just why we need these skills more than ever. And I introduced each skill, talking more about what it is and how we can use and develop these 7 skills: adaptability, empathy, critical thinking, integrity, optimism, being proactive and resilience through simple everyday actions. So in series 2, I'm going to be exploring more themes linked to these 7. I've also got some great interviews lined up for you. And for the first time in this series, we're going to be introducing some questions from our listeners. So each episode, I'll be featuring and answering one of your questions. So if you have one that you want answering, get in touch via our Instagram 7 Skills for the Future feed, or find me on Twitter or the website Unimenta, and yours might get included. Remember too that if you want more, just buy the book 7 Skills for the Future. It's out now in all major bookstores, via Amazon and other online retailers.
So, Emma Sue, can you tell us what we're going to be talking about in today's episode?
Well, today I want to talk about our use of social media. I want to link this to critical thinking. So we're all on it every day, for better or for worse, probably using a range of platforms. And how we use social media has a big impact on our happiness and well-being levels. So I want to explore some of that in this podcast. I want to go through some creative, different approaches to help manage social media in really positive ways. And if we can do that, it really sharpens our critical thinking skills. And critical thinking is something we really need now and in the future. You know, we spend half the day staring at some sort of screen, never mind social media. So, James, do you have a sense of how often you're picking up your phone in an average day? You know, how often do you interact with social media platforms, would you say?
Oh, I'm terrified to even think about it. I can't imagine. I mean, I think like a lot of people, it just becomes like a reflex, you know, where you just keep, you have a split second where you're not doing anything and you just pick up your phone and check Facebook or Twitter or, you know, Instagram. Yeah, I don't even want to know.
Okay, well, that's a very honest answer. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners can identify with this. I mean, you know, it's really thinking about what is our relationship with technology like? You know, does it feel healthy? Do we ever rein it in? You know, do we check our phone first thing in the morning before feet hit the floor, you know, scrolling, catching up? Terrible way to start the day, by the way. You know, it's kind of just reflecting on that relationship with technology. It's something we don't really do very often. And that question as well, how many times a day do you interact with social media platforms? A lot of us really don't even know. There are apps that can tell you, and, you know, now there's ways that you can limit your use on smartphones. But I feel that we need to have an awareness ourselves about when we tend to interact with them. So like you said, James, you know, just picking it up when you've got a free moment, you know, picking up and scrolling. What is triggering that? It's just a kind of reflex, as you say. And then the other question, of course, is, you know, what do you do or what do we do when we are interacting with them? You know, are we posting something? Are we responding to something? Are we reacting? Are we debating? You know, what's actually going on? So I think this is a really important question to ask. And I'd like our listeners to be just thinking about that for a moment. You know, what is my relationship with technology like? Another great question is, you know, do you ever take a break from your phone? This feels like it's becoming harder and harder to do, even for me. But I know that when I do take a break, I feel like I have more space. I feel more in tune with my day and I feel a bit clearer. So these kinds of questions that are about knowing and understanding our own patterns. So maybe a more mindful use of tech than perhaps we're used to. And thinking about, how does social media add value to your life? How does it maybe steal your energy? What's going on? So there's a lot to think about there. But in terms of some statistics, I mean, there are a lot of studies and statistics around how often we're using these platforms. But one study, over 70% of US teens and adults are on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, over 1.2 billion users daily. The average person spending about 90 minutes a day on all social media platforms combined. And I suspect it's actually probably, a lot more than this. And there are well-known news stories on the effects of Instagram on image. For young people, there's a lot of that. So I think there is slowly more awareness of how social media can impact our lives. But the purpose of this right now is to link our management of social media with better critical thinking skills.
Okay, Emma, so we hear a lot about the negative sides of social media, but do you think there are any positives?
Yes, I do. There are lots of positives, and it's really important to have those in mind as well. So things like self-expression, being able to express your ideas and thoughts, social media allows you to do that, connecting with other people, exchanging ideas. I think it's great for learning, for curiosity, creating a community. It's great for businesses, especially for small businesses. They're able to interact with people everywhere. It's fantastic for that. Engagement and belonging. There's a lot that is really, really positive. But unfortunately, there are also some not great things. So if we're overusing these platforms, then it can impact our ability to be present, to focus. Those two things are really important for critical thinking. It can impact our productivity. So we might be spending time on social media that at the expense of perhaps other things we could be doing. We might feel overwhelmed because there's a lot of, information and opinions and views coming at us. So these kinds of things impact our critical thinking skills. So for me, it's about managing social media appropriately, not getting rid of it altogether, but yes, using it in a positive way, but managing it in a good way as well. So, for example, social media feeds can often be full of really negative news stories. And even the way that we ingest news is so different now. It's kind of designed to feed into the part of the brain that craves drama and zeroes in on fear, with all these images and video clips and so this leaves very little space for actual facts and for real critical thinking. So I think, for me, the link with critical thinking here is that critical thinking is all about discerning information, being able to distinguish between what is good information, what is less, fake information, especially with social media, questioning assumptions. So we need to constantly challenge our own assumptions and our own biases. So it's about slowing down and using social media more mindfully and just making sure it's adding value. So be more aware of its addictive nature, be more aware of how we respond to it and things that it can trigger.
So I, like a lot of people, find social media very distracting.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it unfortunately is because we just become less efficient and less effective because we are interrupting ourselves all the time through this constant checking and just not having any kind of discipline about it. So we also then feel quite overwhelmed and overloaded. And what it does is it puts us in a state of constant alert, and that's not a good space from which to make clear decisions or to even think clearly. So that's the impact of not managing that distraction. And so it's up to us to manage that. It's up to us to think, okay, am I going to have some periods of time when my phone is not on or not always near me? Am I going to do things like perhaps not have so many notifications on my phone? Am I going to have some strategies in place that will help me manage it more effectively? And then the other side to that is to think about when you are on social media, what are you actually doing? Are you interacting with people, or are you scrolling headlines or posting images or promoting something or listening to an awesome podcast like this one? What does your life online look like? It's just thinking about that and thinking, how is this good for me? Or how is this not so good for me?
But can social media actually help us with critical thinking skills? I mean, is that even possible?
I think it is. I think one way we can use it as a model for how to relate to others who think differently to us. So it can be quite handy for looking at things from an intellectual perspective. A big part of intelligence and, thinking is being able to learn from anything. And a big part of that is the ability to evaluate ideas without personal bias. And there's no platform better to do that than social media, because you're going to get so many different ideas and opinions coming at you. So the ability to sit with that, neither accept it or reject it, but just kind of sit with it and recognize, okay, this is somebody's view, that can be really useful. Things like choosing not to take a news story or blog post or whatever it is you're looking at face value, what somebody posts online or posts on a social media platform. It's really important to be aware of where people are getting the information from. So people who are interested in posting accurate information online will link to their information sources, and there should be a way of linking it back to something that is a reliable source. So it's important to check those sorts of things out. I think also we can use it for critical thinking in the sense that we've got 7 basic psychological needs. It's nice having 7 because that kind of links to the 7 skills. But, we do have these basic 7, and they are acknowledgement, attention, approval, appreciation, acclaim, assurance, and inclusion. So these are quite interesting words, and social media really feeds into these 7 basic needs, which is why we love it, which is why we gravitate towards it so much. So thinking critically would mean asking yourself before you post something, whether you're seeking to be validated or seeking to be seen or seeking approval or any one of those, and is there a more constructive way of doing it rather than posting something out there on social media? So I think there are definitely things that you can use it for that will boost your critical thinking skills. I think there are also some things that you can do that will help create more space for thinking. I'd like to tell our listeners about some of the things that I've done that have helped me. I've done things like removing social media apps from my phone. Really, really, really effective, because it means that if I want to interact with a social media platform, I have to go to my tablet or go to the website or go to my computer. So I'm adding in an extra step, which stops that reflexive action, just from picking up the phone. So it's really effective to do that. Most people have tons and tons and tons of apps on their phone, all the social media apps. And this is what creates a distraction, because they're there. And every time you see a notification, or that somebody has posted something or, commented or liked something that you've put up there, you're going to want to look at it. You can't help it. Your brain is going to crave looking at it. But if it's not there, then your brain won't do that. So that's really effective. I found that really good. I also have times when my phone's not near me. Because again, that means I've actually got to go somewhere to get the phone. So, this is supported by studies that reveal that just having the phone near you or, on the table during a conversation has an impact, and not a good one, because you're distracted and you want to look at it. So having times when your phone's not near you, having times when it's switched off completely, going for a walk without it, turning off those notifications and updates, or just having them on at times that suit you, choosing when you join conversations or not. And when I am interacting, I try to add value. I try to think of ways to add value. But even I find it hard, even I find that I want to interact, and I feel like, gosh, I'm wasting my time. Why am I doing this? I want to do something more productive with my time, or make sure that when I am interacting, I'm, adding value in some way, either for myself or to the people that I'm interacting with.
Okay. That's some great advice. Thank you, Emma Sue. I shall definitely be thinking about doing some of those things. Let's take a quick break and then we'll come back with a question from a listener. So welcome back to the 7 Skills for the Future podcast. We've got a new feature this series. We're taking questions from our listeners. If you'd like to submit a question, well, Emma Sue mentioned at the beginning of the episode, and I'll be mentioning it again at the end. So today's question comes from Ratna in the UK, Emma Sue. She is asking, in Anatomy of Success, I read with interest that Martin Seligman gives a formula A, B, C, D, E, which stands for adversity, belief, consequence, distract, and energize, for optimism. So what's your formula for allaying negative thoughts and pessimism?
Oh, what a great question. Actually, the ABCDE exercise is something we do on our workshops when we look at optimism. So it's a really, really effective way to increase awareness of how we respond to events around us. So, yeah, I love that model. So in terms of a formula for not having negative thoughts and for pessimism, I'm not sure there is a formula. I would say that actually the ABCDE method is an effective one, because what you do with that is you look at a situation or something that's bothering you and you try to understand your responses to it, because you're actually responding to that situation rather than to a feeling. So Martin Seligman did this with people over a period of 4 weeks, and it was a really effective way of changing their way of thinking to a more energized way of looking at something, and understanding that actually it's never the situation or the event that is causing us problems, it's the way that we respond to it. So that is a great formula, in terms of applying an exercise. But I think otherwise, optimism is all about the actions that you take. So if you are somebody who is prone to having negative thoughts, you're not going to be able to just turn them into positive thoughts, but you can recognize how you might be feeling. You can recognize, okay, I don't feel so great today, or I'm thinking, I am thinking negatively about this. So you can kind of almost label it, how you're feeling. And then you can take some action that should be a positive action towards that situation somehow. So it could be that you think, okay, today I don't feel so great. I'm going to make sure I do certain things that will help me feel better. And then the kind of feeling actually passes and changes.
Okay, thanks, Emma Sue. That was some great advice. I think that brings us to the end of today's episode.
Yes, it does. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you for listening to the 7 Skills for the Future podcast. There are all sorts of things you can do to boost each of the 7 skills. If you want more ideas, you can buy the book, 7 Skills for the Future. You can also go online to our website, Unimentor, and join as a member, and you'll be able to access more resources, ideas, and free downloads. If you have a question you want to ask on these podcasts, get in touch through Instagram at 7 Skills for the Future, or on Twitter and Facebook at Unimentor. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your podcast player of choice.